Thank you to Ismat Really for becoming a member of the channel, and thank you again to Ismat Really for gifting 5 memberships. So Blaze X, Up the Trin, Waze, Peter G and Finn Bobs are now members of the channel. Thank you very much to all members for your support. Now let's get on with the video. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Kinetic Rugby League channel. I've left a recap of last round's predictions up on the screen for you guys to check out, as well as how I'm doing so far this season. Of course, I won't be counting Wakefield versus Salford yet until an actual outcome has been decided for that, so that's just a non-game as of right now. It's likely that Wakefield may just be given the win for it, but that's probably not going to count as far as predictions go anyway. But as always, if you guys have your own predictions, let me know in the comment section down below. But let's get on with the first game of this week. Kicking things off, we have the Leeds Rhinos taking on the Hull Kingston Rovers. Starting with form, Leeds have won 3 in their last 5. Hull KR have won 4 in their last 5. Now, Leeds did win last time out. The game before that as well, they competed for a good hour, 65, maybe 70 minutes, and lost it in the final quarter. I can't remember how late it was that KR scored, but they've competed with KR on both occasions. Now, firstly, in the last game, they competed with KR through the middle. There's not many teams that can compete, maybe in patches here and there, but Leeds have a forward pack that can go toe-to-toe with KR's forward pack for a full 80 minutes when it's at full strength. And also, one thing they did last time was constantly move the ball around. That was something I mentioned in my predictions video then, is that I thought that Leeds were more likely to take risks and move the ball, which is what they did, and it worked out nicely, pushing back those edge defenders and eating up more metres out wide. So not just constantly going for that wrestle through the middle, they would stretch the defence, and that certainly worked out. Now, I think in terms of player availability, and I know I was off last week, so first of all, let me apologise for that. May should be back for this one. I thought he just had the 1 match ban, but it was a 2, so yes, he should be back for this one, which means that what I said last week, players in more comfortable positions or more regular positions, means that the back line could be strong, and that goes into something that could have been an advantage for Leeds, but might not be. We'll have to see based on player availability later in the week. There are some big forwards missing for Leeds, though, so it's going to be a lot harder to compete through the middle. So I don't think Leeds will want to get into that back and forth as much as they did last time and the time before, which means they'll have to spread the ball around even more so. There is another way that they can make those meters, which is something they've been doing constantly. This year, I talk about it nearly every single week. They'll spread the ball out wide. Who will it go to? It will go to Newman, and it will go to Handley. What will they then do? Say it with me now. They will cut back towards the middle. And then as the middles for KR, they start tracking back for the next tackle. There's a few extra meters that they can use up in the middle to gain the meters that are likely to be lost from the smaller forward pack that Leeds could be bringing this week. So that's how they'll make some of the extra meters through the middle, getting the ball to Handley, getting the ball to Newman, and then they cut back towards the middle. Maybe a couple more offloads in there as well to keep the play alive. And we saw Leeds against Cass at the weekend. When they kept doing that, they ended up producing some beautiful tries off the back of it. So maybe that's what Leeds will have to focus on. Constantly being active, constantly being there for the offloads, stretching the defence as well, and not really competing through the middle as much, or not making that a focus as much this week. I think one of the other points of entry for Leeds could have been, and again, assuming that May is going to be straight in, the back line is a little more stable, that Batchelor doesn't need to play in the centres. Even if he is playing in the centres, the only real point of entry is just based on pace alone. Defensively, he's been solid. Carrying the ball has been solid. In just normal centre duties has been solid. But it's just the difference of pace. I think he'd be matched up against Newman, who could maybe get around the outside of him. But as I said, he's been defensively reliable, so could get a hand on him and bring him down straight away. It's just a potential point of entry. If there's going to be any kind of weakness in this back line for KR, that's a potential one there. Now, both of these sides are great defensively. The thing is, in this matchup as well, you think about the teams as their standard performances. You've got KR here, Leeds here. It's close. There's a gap, but it's close. Leeds will have to basically increase their level of performance to match the standard that KR produce on a regular basis. Which one is more reliable? I think KR's standard is more reliable than Leeds elevating, and with some of the players missing through the middle as well, it's going to be a little bit tougher. I do think as well, KR's kicking game will likely be fine this week, and they know how to suffocate teams inside their own half. And again, with some of the options missing in the forwards, it could be harder for Leeds to work the ball out their own end. So it goes left side to Lewis, right side to May, or even Morg that might be involved in some of the kicking. They'll kick towards the corners, suffocate Leeds inside their own territory, and they'll have to do a lot of work to get the ball out their own end. And I think that field position will just keep building. I think later on in the game, Leeds will find themselves behind and maybe, start chucking the ball around even more. That's when KR's defence will start to be tired towards the back end of the game as well. Both teams will be tired, but that's where Leeds might find more points. So I think KR will have full control throughout the game, but it's towards the back end Leeds will start fighting back, maybe find a few more points, and that the scoreline will look a little bit closer. So for prediction, I'm going to go with Leeds Rhinos 16, Hull Kingston Rovers 22. Next up, we have what could be the game of the round in St Helens taking on Hull FC. Starting with form, both have won 4 in their last 5 Super League games. Now, Hull FC had what you might call an off day against Huddersfield Giants a few weeks back, but they do appear to be peaking at the right time, which is a good sign. So are Saints as well. But yeah, Hull FC, I think they kind of needed this a little bit more than Saints because they need to get into playoffs. But yeah, Hull FC appear to be peaking at the right time. I think the forwards for FC, they did a great job versus Leigh. This one is likely going to be tougher. But what did they do against Leigh? First of all, they carried well. The forwards did an excellent job through the middle, either getting offloads, quick play the balls, or post-contact meters especially. Then off the back of it, what did they do? They kicked to the corners, not just kind of, just putting the ball in the air and then it lands 15, 20 metres out from the try line. It was as close to the corner as they could possibly get. It wasn't always perfect, but a lot of the times Leigh were catching the ball a few metres in front of their own try line. And then defensively, they'd press as a line, they'd keep them pinned back, and then they'd be disciplined off the back of it. They gave away a few penalties, but they backed themselves defensively when they had to defend further back, further up the pitch. But they kept pinning Leigh back. Can they do the same to Saints? Maybe, but that starts with being able to compete through the middle with their carries. Can they find enough meters? When they spread the ball, are they able to make enough meters out wide? Or will Saints' defence, which has been great recently, as we all know, it's been fantastic over the last few months at this point, really, will they press up high enough to restrict those meters that Hull could make out wide to make up for the potential deficits through the middle? We will see. Now, FC I believe they'll be without Price and Asiata. They've already been missing them a lot this year. They'd only just come back in, but I believe that they'll both be missing. Cust passed his HIA in the last round, so should be fine as well, which is huge for them. Watts is questionable as of right now. If they have him available, great, because they need his size up front. They need as many big bodies in the forwards as possible, and Watts is certainly a big body up front. Now, Saints' defence has been fantastic recently. It's been absolutely fantastic. Now, against the Hull FC side that has been missing a few key pieces in the backs recently, Saints might be okay. I do think Hull FC have done a great job adjusting without the pieces that they've been missing. They've been missing Rapina, they've missed Caesar, they've missed Price, they missed Asiata at 13. So with the changes that Hull FC have had to go through, they have been improving a lot. They've finally adapted and they look a lot more comfortable. But with more changes again this week, does that make it even easier for Saints? I think so. They're already difficult to disrupt. So I think Saints' defence might be fine in this one. I think on paper this does lean towards Saints. Because of their defence and the forwards, I think they'll likely be a little bit more effective than Leigh. Also, Leigh did lose out on Offengawi early on, so that didn't help. But I think Saints forwards, I think they're a little bit more effective anyway, and it's harder to pin Saints back than Leigh, in my opinion, because of the potential for line breaks out wide as well. And we saw what Percival did against Huddersfield at the weekend. He did a great job there, and Sailor too. Their attack is now where they want it to be as well. As I said, with Percival finding line breaks, Sailor, whether it be carries from the ruck. There was a moment where Cudjoe kind of had to let him go, but there was space to use. He got himself an offload, and then there was a try off the back of it, Clark to Percival. Whether it be Lomax connecting in the offence a little bit more. I think he's looked a lot more comfortable, a lot more stable. The kicking from him by, as I've said in plenty of weeks recently. Whether it be Robertson with a step round the outside, or cutting back inside on the right edge, or it'd be a kick towards Felt in the corner, going up and getting it, because he's a tall guy, very experienced in those aerial duels. So there's a lot of weapons. It's not just individuals now for Saints. They're putting it together as a unit, but they can still utilise individual qualities here and there wherever they need to. And then Owen Dagnall on the left-hand side. Great performance against Huddersfield. Excellent work. Could just do more of that individual stuff, that magic that he showed. Just more of that. And it's always nice to see young players thriving and flourishing in Super League. So well done to him as well. But yeah, that attack, not just a bunch of individuals for Saints now. They look like a unit. Actually has an identity. They know what they want to do. I think they'll pin Hull FC back fair few too many times. Just build that field position. And their defence over 80 minutes, I think, will be enough to just sustain that gap, even if the defence has a day off this time around. So for a prediction, I'm going to go with St Helens 24, Hull FC 12. Next up, we have Leigh Leopards taking on Salford Red Devils. Not really too much that's going to be said in this one. To be honest, one's going to be pretty short and sweet. In terms of form, Leigh have won 3 in their last 5. They've lost 2 games in a row. They have been on an exceptionally tough run, though. They've played Wigan, KR, Saints, Wire, Leeds, and Hull FC in their last 6 games. That is a ridiculous run of games. Salford have won 1 in their last 5. Last game was, of course, cancelled versus Wakefield due to welfare concerns. As of right now, I don't know if this one is going ahead. I will assume, for the sake of argument, that it is. For the sake of this section, everyone's assumption would be that Leigh will put up at least 60 points as an absolute minimum. I don't know how much training has been disrupted for Salford. Has training still been the usual? Have they been able to build combinations? Is there more chemistry amongst the players that they do actually have available? I don't know. But Leigh are likely to get a week off. I do think there's a chance that this one is cancelled again, but for the sake of argument, Leigh, they'll be too strong through the middle, so a lot of easy meters, a lot of pace out wide. I think they'll also want to get back to winning ways after a sort of shaky performance against Hull FC. It was not perfect. They'll just want to keep piling points on the board and just kind of set a statement as high as Hull FC did previously, St Helens at the start of the season, when Wakefield played them midway through the year as well. But yeah, I think all areas, 60 is a bare minimum for Leigh. Salford maybe with more time together, maybe they can be a little bit more resilient on the try line. Maybe can build the combinations and find a few more line breaks, but that's about it. It would just be here and there every few sets, and that's it. So for a prediction in this one, if it is to be played, I'm going to go with Leigh Leopards 76, Salford Red Devils 6. Next up, we have the Clash of the Titans in Catalans Dragons taking on Castleford Tigers. Cannot wait for this one. Starting with form, the Dragons have won 0 in their last 5. The Tigers have won 1 in their last 5. How exciting. Now, Catalans do have the advantage of having a squad full of better individual players. I think neither side's great, but I think in terms of individual matchups, it definitely suits Catalans for this one. They do have bigger forwards on paper, more experienced halves, and better quality towards the edges as well. Even though I do like some of the quality out wide for Cas, all throughout the squad, it definitely leans in favour of Catalans. There's a few exceptions in there. Now, Castleford can be disruptive on their own try line. It's when they're trying to put teams back in, keep them inside their own half or inside the midfield. I don't have much trust. I do think Cas can be quite a disruptive side when defending inside the red zone. They can certainly put in those displays. They'll shift across, they'll work hard for each other. And given that Catalans aren't a great attacking side this season, they haven't been over the last few months especially, that maybe if they do work their way inside the red zone, it's not going to be that easy to put up points. That's a possibility there. Catalans, they did a good job last week, though, against Warrington, of being able to find breaks in the midfield. There was a couple times they had pressure on Warrington's try line. It took them a while to really put points up in those positions, but they found breaks inside the midfield, which is a good sign for this one if Cas are going to be strong on their own goal line. Down that right edge with Farge leading the attack, if they can keep that up, if they can isolate, say, Mella, or it would be Lewis Senior, then possibly there's something over on that right edge attack for Catalans. it did feel like there was a little bit more pace, a little bit more intent, more of an effort to be creative. Because what I think we've seen a lot from Catalans recently is just basic attacking shapes, and they'll just keep moving the ball. Like, that's it. They'll just keep moving out wide, but it's not connected enough, or it's not fast enough to actually break anyone's defence. They barely did anything against Huddersfield, and their defence has been shaky at best in the last few months. So, Catalans offensively, normally what we'll see is towards the back end of a game, just this for all teams, by the way, for all teams, back end of a game, you're chasing a game and you need to do something. You need to start throwing the ball around. That felt like how... It felt like Catalans started that way. Like they were willing to just do things a little bit differently that you'd normally see when a team's chasing a game. That's what it felt like. Now, Castleford, though, are unreliable as a team. I've talked about their incredible performances that they can put in every now and then. But they're unreliable as a team. I do think there are some reliable individuals. I think Sim is a reliable option for, like, say, kicks to the corners. If Cass getting good territory, kick towards the corners. I think Sim aerially in the last few weeks has looked quite effective. Amon with his carries, I think he struggled a lot against Leeds, but he's typically reliable with his carries in getting the post-contact meters or a quick play the ball. So maybe he helps to level the playing field up front, possibly. Because even though Catalans do have a bigger pack, some of the carries have been a little bit lethargic recently. And Pangai Jr. against Warrington, I was excited to see him because he's coming to Warrington next year. Had a pretty dull game, to be honest. Just didn't look interested at all. But then there's also Assi. His kicking game wasn't really much he could do last week, or at the weekend, I should say, against Leeds. But I think his kicking game has looked a little bit better in recent weeks. I think if Atkin is there at 7, he can also help to relieve that as well. And also Assi's run game inside the red zone. If they do get in the red zone, he could find some tries because defensively Catalans still have work to do there as well. I think this one may depend on who starts the game better, but I don't trust either to start well. I think the only real evidence that I've got that a team can start a game better is most recent is Catalans last week started really well against Warrington, whereas Castleford were poor. They were great the week before, I think it was against Hull KR for the first 20 minutes, but yeah, I think just based on individual quality, ability to start the game better might just fall to Catalans in this one. So for a prediction, I'm going to go with Catalans Dragons 28, Castleford Tigers 12. Next up, we have the Huddersfield Giants taking on the Warrington Wolves, starting with form. Both have won 2 in their last 5, and those 2 wins for Warrington actually were against Catalans Dragons. Now, Huddersfield, they do have bigger forwards, so they will be happy to get into a back and forth wrestle through the middle. Which is pretty much what happened last time. I think Warrington, there's talk about them trying to, fight and compete through the middle. Burgess talks about it a lot, about having that mentality, having that fight, and really trying to go toe-to-toe through the middle. There isn't the size for it. It's a nice idea, but Warrington aren't slowing down the forwards enough. They're not stopping the offloads enough. They're not slowing the ruck down enough. It's a nice idea, it's just not happening because the forwards aren't big enough. Now you look at Huddersfield, they have some big forwards, and they had plenty of big forwards to compete against Saints, but they were shut down fairly easily. Rodgers is a big bloke, he barely got anywhere. But this is a much smaller pack to compete with, so Huddersfield might actually be fine. I think Rodgers could be alright. Greenwood has put in some great carries in the last few months. And then you got guys like Wilson, English, Cudjoe when he carries the ball through the middle, some from Golding as well. I think there's a good chance that carries through the middle for Huddersfield might be fine in this one. Now the Giants usually know how to start games well. Against Saints, not so much, but usually know how to start games well. Whereas Warrington, they don't really have an identity. The way it feels for me with Warrington is they're more reactionary, which I think is the right word, where they'll wait too long to see what's needed. I don't look at Warrington and think, here's the game plan, here's how we'll set up against this team. I think we will do this and that, we'll just carry the ball, maybe spread the ball here and there. There's no identity. And then when we have to start chucking the ball around, we will do. If we can somehow compete through the middle, then great. But we react to what the game needs rather than have an identity that can be built from. And we've seen from the best teams this year that teams with an identity that aren't just reactionary will be the better sides. Hull Kingston Rovers, prime example. Leeds, another great example. Leigh, when they started improving, they had an identity, prime example. Saints now as well. There are identities forming. Hull FC as well. So there's no identity there for Warrington. It's reactionary. So what the game needs, they'll try and involve themselves with. They'll try and do. They'll try and fix. But yeah, I think it could be an issue for Warrington chasing the game later on. That's going to be a big issue. Now, one thing that does remain consistent for Warrington at least, compared to Huddersfield, is scoring points. It's not been a lot, but it has been fairly consistent. Warrington have been able to find 3, 4 or 5 tries per game in the last 6, maybe 7 weeks. So it's not great points, but it's consistent. That's the thing. It is consistent. And another thing for Warrington is this going to be a big game for them? We all know that Warrington this season, aside from probably just Vegas, have typically shown up for the bigger games. There was one against Leeds earlier where there was a battering, but a lot of big games Warrington have shown up for this year. Is this a big game because Warrington need to win it for playoffs, or will it be just seen as any other game because 1, it's against Huddersfield, and 2, they might not think that playoffs is possible? Even though mathematically it still is, what will the Warrington players be thinking? Will they be up for this fight? I don't know. And that's going to be a tough one. The final few points would be, has Dufty earned a place back for this week after playing in the reserves at the weekend? Has King earned a place back as well? Is Vaughan good to go? I think he was rested for injury. That was what was reported anyway. But are King and Dufty back in? Is Vaughan going to be available? And if those two are back in after earning a spot, how much do they want to keep it? That's going to be an important question. Will they really turn up for that game and they could be the difference maker? And having Dufty in there and Warrington finally having a proper spine, or the spine that they want, could be the difference. I do think this is going to be a case of Huddersfield starting well. I think the forwards will look fine. And I think so far Warrington have been just reliable enough in putting up enough points. I think it'll be extremely close. I think Huddersfield, a little bit like with Catalans against Warrington, will take that early lead. And Warrington will just find enough resilience defensively as the game goes on. And will just find enough points. I think. I'm really not that confident about it, but I'm going to go with Huddersfield Giants 18, Warrington Wolves 24. Finally for this round, we have another contender for Game of the Week, and that is Wigan Warriors versus Wakefield Trinity. Starting with form, both have won 3 in their last 5 Super League games. Now, Wakefield went from beating Leeds 3 weeks ago to then being basically dominated by St Helens the week after, which was quite disappointing, to be honest. I thought, I did have Saints to win that one, but I thought Wakefield could at least look a little bit more, competitive in that one. So that was unfortunate. Now, Wigan maybe have French back this week. Pete chose not to risk him against KR because he wasn't, ready to go. And I think there was an injury for Farriman during the week. So he was good to go for the reserves, but wasn't really training due to an injury. So it was Kieran that played at 6. Not sure if French is going to be back for this one, but maybe. There is a possibility. I think there's a good match with this one. I think the forwards, they match up quite nicely. Wigan more for size and Wakefield more for mobility. So they're both about as good as each other, I think, in terms of quality as of right now and how they're performing, but they're both better at different things. Wigan more for the punch and impact. Wakefield more for the pace and quick play the balls, that kind of thing, possibly offloads as well. They're both a fairly good match up front, so that's going to be interesting which kind of style works out better. And I think they're also kind of on par with each other in terms of how they use their sets. Do they want to go to the kick? I think earlier in the season, Wakefield focused more on just trying to move the ball around, which was great. I love that about them, and they really showed intent, and that was really fun to watch. I think they've become a little bit more mature as a team and focused a little bit more on getting to the end of the set, getting the ball to Lino or whoever else is going to be in the halves, because it changes nearly every week at this point, but getting the ball to the halfback and then kicking and then building sets off the back of it. I think they've matured in that way. They haven't completely lost their identity in wanting to shift the ball around. I think they've just matured, which is a good sign. So for me, they're on par with choosing whether to get to the end of the set and then kick, build pressure or whether to move the ball around in the midfield. So in terms of choosing when to launch the ball out wide, is going to be interesting to see. I think both out wide defensively have been quite reliable as well. I think normally we trust Wigan more on paper, just based on stats this year as well. So I think Wigan are the more reliable, offensively and defensively as well. But I think in terms of styles, I think it could be really, really interesting this week. Now, both have also been dealing with a lot of changes in the backs. If French is back this week, is he going to be enough? I think there's a positive and a negative to French being back. The positive is, of course, individually he can break open any defensive line. So if he's there, even if Wigan aren't connecting as well as they were earlier in the year, they have been slightly disconnected offensively in recent weeks and months, he can still make up for that by just finding breaks by himself. The negative to that is it just going to be simple as just get the ball to French, let him do something, and if he can't, what else does Wigan have? Are they going to be so reliant on French? And that is if he's back in. We will see. Wigan do want top two. They might assume that the League Leaders Shield is done. They might assume that. It's still mathematically possible. KR have a tough run, so we will see. But do they just want to make sure they get top two and get that bye in the first round of playoffs? With Wakey, I think they'll want to respond to what Hull FC did against Leigh. That was a big statement from FC, and Wakey were kind of seen as the favourites, given their run going into playoffs. They were seen as favourites for that 6th spot. So they'll want to respond to what FC did. And also, they've just had a week off. So possibly fresher bodies and more time to perfect things. They'll hopefully have more of an idea of what team they'll want to have available for this one and be able to perfect how they'll move the ball around and focus more on the areas of Wigan. If Kieran's playing at 6, they'll find ways to shut him down because he's not that comfortable in that role, but he's done all right here and there. And they'll find more ways possibly to shut down Wigan overall. I think Wakefield might get this one done. I would not be surprised if Wigan wins this one, and even comfortably to be fair, but I've just got a gut feeling Wakefield need to respond. And I think they might just. So I'm going to go with Wigan Warriors 18, Wakefield Trinity 19. So there you have my Super League Round 23 predictions. As always, if you guys have your own predictions, do let me know in the comments section down below. But if you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like. It does help to get the video out there to more people. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with more Kinetic Rugby League content. And if you'd like to become a member, you can do by clicking the join button below this video and joining for as little as £1 per month. Well, that's going to be it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.